Welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here at Sport 101, we expand our conversation to include the history, past, present, as well as in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook at Jamar Harp. This week, we're coming to you remote from Vose Studios, a subsidiary of Vose Productions. You can also follow Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is a sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show and many others. Keep up with breaking sports news, and if you miss a show, don't worry about it. You can listen to a podcast or watch a video via the YouTube channel. Search SportsZone Chicago. But more importantly, we want everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. This week's episode, we'll be talking about Naomi Osaka, Hafu, race and culture. If you look at the title picture right here, you can see Miss Osaka and some of her protest paraphernalia. We'll go over the Hafu term later, but again, the show is about Naomi Osaka, and we're going to discuss her. Last week, 23-year-old Naomi Osaka, the second-ranked woman in international tennis and the highest-paid female athlete in the world, withdrew from the French Open after a power struggle with tournament officials over whether she would attend an obligatory press conference. Osaka has had trouble in the tournament in the past, having never advanced out of the third round. Last week, Osaka announced on social media that she was skipping the all-news conferences during the event to protect her mental health. Ms. Osaka was quoted as saying, "I have often felt that people have no regard for athletes' mental health, and this rings very true whenever I see a press conference or partake in one. We're often sat there and asked questions that we've been asked multiple times before, or ask questions that bring doubt into our minds. And I'm just not going to subjugate myself to people that doubt me." In reality, the episode laid bare some of the deeper tensions within big money athletes. These tensions include who controls a sport, of the leagues that organize a competition, or the athletes that actually participate. When athletes have direct access to fans via social media platforms, what role should traditional sports media play? And when athletes, particularly athletes of color, feel mistreated by tournaments, sports leagues, and media outlets alike, what recourse do these athletes have? Rather than figure out a way to support Miss Osaka or come to a workable compromise, French Open officials fined her $15,000 after she didn't participate in the mandatory news conference following her first round win on Saturday. The fine was not a surprise. In the past, other tennis stars have skipped news conferences and received the same treatment. However, with Miss Osaka, they choose to go a little deeper. Tournament officials weren't satisfied with just a fine and wanted to prove a point. So officials from across the tennis world felt the need to put Miss Osaka in her place. In a statement signed by the heads of all four Grand Slam tournaments, those tournaments include Wimbledon, the Australian Open, the U.S. Open, and the French Open, Osaka was warned that she could face suspension from future Grand Slam tournaments and harsher penalties if she does not fulfill her media obligations. Conservative commentator Candace Owens initially told Naomi Osaka to quit tennis before Lady backtracking on her comments when a tennis star revealed the extent of her mental health struggles. Candace Owens' quotes were initially as, "She's starting to get so annoying. Just quit tennis and become a full-time activist." Now, this is similar to what they told LeBron James and just shut up and dribble. Candace Owens later went on and said, "You make millions and now you're complaining again because you think you're a special snowflake that shouldn't have to do press conferences because they're a form of mental abuse." However, just a few hours later, when Osaka had revealed her struggles with depression, Candace Owens changed her stance and threw her support behind the tennis star, who announced that she will now take some time away from the court. Candace Owens was quoted as saying, after she backtracked, "Naomi Osaka made the right decision. Mental illness is serious and it's always an act of courage to step away to deal with personal issues." Emphasis on the word personal. It's becoming too fashionable for one person's experience to transform into a demand for everybody else, Owens wrote. So again, Owens seems very insensitive to what the athletes are facing, in particular the African American women athletes in women's tennis. As we know, the WTA is not diverse, and there's been so many complaints in the past, and particularly from the Williams sisters on how they were treated, not only by officials but in the locker room with other peers. Osaka has received largely favorable coverage since she's left the French Open, and it's also due to her performance on a tennis court the last few years, along with her social activism activities. People say, well, where did she get this from? Why is she coming to all these conclusions? You're the top ranked woman in the world. You're the top earning woman athlete in the world. So what's going on? Miss Osaka says she witnessed other stars of color being treated this way, most notably Serena Williams, having been portrayed in a light the media depicted for them throughout their careers. In fact, in one of her Instagram posts announcing that she was skipping out on media sessions at the French Open, Miss Osaka, included a clip from an interview Venus Williams did with ABC News in 1995. In this interview, the Williams sisters' father, Richard Williams, chastised the interviewer for continually questioning his daughter about her high confidence. Richard Williams told the reporter, "You have to understand you're dealing with the image of a 14-year-old child. And this child is going to be out there playing when your old ass is going to be in the grave, just like me. You're dealing with a little black kid, let her be a kid." And these are the words from Richard Williams. Richard Williams was known for taking all the heat from his daughters, taking all the pressure so they can go out there and perform the best on the tennis court. Such scrutiny became a part of an exhausting pattern for the Williams sisters. The New York Times once published an article about how other women in the tennis world, and particularly the locker room, didn't want the kind of body Serena had. They would talk about her disgracefully in the locker room, and oftentimes majority of these women of European descent. These instances and other social situations have led Osaka to take a position she does not want with the media. Being booed after beating Serena Williams, her idol, and then being questioned after she received the trophy after the match with two black women also gave her a negative impression on the media. So her first big win, she beat Serena Williams. And after that, she was questioned so hard trying to pit the two black women against each other when there's not a lot of black women in the WTA already. So now let's dive into who is Naomi Osaka. Now, if you put picture one up, Greg, please. Naomi Osaka is an Afro-Japanese professional tennis player. Again, she's an Afro-Japanese. Her father is from IAT and her mother's from Japan. She has been ranked the #1 player in the world by the Women's Tennis Association, WTA, and is the first player with Asian lineage to hold a top ranking in the singles category. She is a 4-time Grand Slam singles champion and is the reigning champion of the U.S. Open as well as the Australia Open. Her 7 titles on the WTA Tour also include 2 at the premier mandatory level. At the 2018 U.S. Open, she beat Serena Williams, that's what I was just referencing, and the 2019 Australian Open, Osaka won her first 2 Grand Slam singles titles in back-to-back Grand Slam tournaments. And she is the first player to achieve this feat since Jennifer Capriati did in 2001. You can see a picture of Miss Osaka doing that right now. Again, this is the 2018 tournament that she beat Serena Williams in. If you remember this game or this tennis match, there was some scrutiny as Serena Williams was chastised and deducted points by the judge or the chair umpire for #1, arguing back, and #2, she was alleged to get coaching from the stands. Osaka is one of the world's most marketable athletes as well, having been ranked 8th among all athletes in endorsement income in 2020. She is also the highest earning female athlete of all time by annual income. So last year in 2020, Naomi Osaka made $37 million, and she made $34 million off of endorsements. Osaka has gained significant recognition as an activist, having showcased support for Black Lives Matter movement in conjunction with her matches. If you look at this picture right here, you'll see Miss Osaka and Black Lives Matter apparel. And we'll talk about later how she went to several other protests. This is picture 3, please. If you look at the picture, she has the fist right there. That fist is very prominent, as was displayed by obviously the Black Panther Party, but also Tommy Lee and John Carlos at the Mexico City Olympics when they got on the stand and were famously sent back to the United States. So you can see Miss Osaka, who is not even a United States citizen, but still recognizes her African heritage and represents that. She was also named one of the 2020 Sports Illustrated Sports Persons of the Year for her activism, largely as a part of her U.S. Open Championship run. She was also included on the Times annual list of the 100 most influential people in the world in both 2019 as well as 2020. In 2021, Naomi Osaka was named the Dolores World Sportswoman of the Year. And you can see these pictures right here. This is her being named the Sportswoman of the Year. And the next picture right here, you'll see her accepting her trophy at the banquet. Now, you can see Miss Osaka right here in her professional gear, but on the court, she has nothing to be played with. Naomi Osaka has an aggressive playing style that displays a powerful serve that can reach 125 miles per hour. This is very significant because that speed of serving is very unconditional to the women's game. The men's game is known for the high-speed serves, and Miss Osaka, Coco Ruff, and the Williams sisters, the African-American women tend to demonstrate a little bit more power and they can get more speed on their serves. This is highly important as tennis may be the last remaining high-profile sport that has different rules for men and women. These rules include, and they come from the most prestigious tennis tournaments. They only can have 4 majors or Grand Slam tournaments the women have. The women play in a best of 3 match scenario where the men play in a best of 5. Why is that important and what's the difference? The difference in the number of matches a person plays in order to win results in a longer playing time for men, which makes it seem like, and they're working harder because they're working for a longer amount of time, but also requires the male tennis players to have more stamina and endurance in order to thrive in longer athletic competitions. And this is one thing Naomi Osaka thrives on, is her strength and endurance. It is also arguable that this discrepancy gives the advantage to weaker female players who have more of an opportunity to cause an upset over a high-ranked rival due to the fact that there's not much time to correct the mistake, or if they have a bad set. It's not like the men's game where I have 5, I only have 3. So you only have 3 matches to earn the title, so you got to make every point, every set count. Historically, these tournaments paid the men's champion prize money a higher rate than the women's champion as well, but the issue has been rectified in the current sports market. Another issue between men's and women's tennis is the gameplay. The fact that men are physically stronger means they can hit the ball harder, creating a faster speed, making it more difficult for their opponents to return the ball, creating a faster paced game. And remember, when you watch on TV, no matter what sport it is in this country, everyone wants to see fast pace, fast pace. Men also achieve more aces when serving than women, so the women have more return rate going back and forth volleying than men do. So in the men's game, what that's basically trying to say is the men's game, they can win a lot of points off their serve, where the other opponent or the other man can't return their serve. But in a women's game, most women can't produce a serve fast enough so it gets returned. So you see longer rallies and volleying back and forth till someone makes a mistake. Again, Naomi Osaka, the Williams sisters, and Coco Gauff have great serves similar to the men and are able to dominate the women's game by keeping their opponents on the baseline. So what that means is with these great serves that the African-American women tennis players have, they can keep their opponent far away from the net, so you don't see a lot of drop shots. They're trying to protect the baseline because the ball's coming at them so fast. Naomi Osaka is an aggressive baseline player with excellent raw power, especially on her forehand and her serve. Osaka could hit 100-mile-an-hour forehands at the age of 16, and her serve has been clocked up to 124 miles per hour. making her one of the 10 fastest servers on record in women's tennis history. While she can use her power to hit high numbers of winners, Osaka's key to success is being able to win long rallies due to strength and stamina. Again, in the women's game, you see more longer rallies than the men's game. So the best women tennis players know how to win these long rallies and get that point. One of the first notable instances in which the strategy proved successful was when Osaka made her first career WTA final at the 2016 Pan Pacific Open. Osaka credited improving her mental approach and cutting down on unforced errors for her breakthrough season in 2018. Naomi Osaka is one of the most marketable athletes in the world. She has earned an estimated $16 million in endorsements alone in 2019, which placed her second among female athletes behind her idol, Serena Williams, who made $25 million. In 2020, she surpassed Serena and became the highest female athlete of all time, having earned $37.4 million in total. Now, again, out of that $37.4 million, $34 million was in endorsements. Overall, she was the 29th highest paid athlete in 2020 and the 8th highest paid athlete in endorsements alone. Nike has been approaching Miss Osaka's to try to get deals since 2019. And what Nike did was originally she signed with Adidas, but Nike came in with a very sweet deal, and she's been with them the last 4 years. So since she's been with Nike, Miss Osaka has developed a clothing collection similar to Serena Williams, but hers is different. Her clothing features a monogram logo that uses her initials and inspired by the Japanese flag. So if you look at these two pictures, you will see Naomi Osaka's brand, and you look at the logo right there, you can see the colors try to represent the Japanese flag as well as the wording. If you go to the next picture, please, Greg. Again, you will see the Naomi Osaka logo on her tight tee that she's wearing. And her tight tee is on, a Vose Verse. The long sleeve shirt that shows off that Nike built is one of their main attractions. This long sleeve shirt shows off the capsule's key design tribute. So if you look at this long sleeve shirt right here, this is a camo print inspired by the coordinates of Japan, Haiti, and the United States. Japan is listed on the shirt because that's where she was born, and that's where her father and mother met. Haiti, as her father is from IAT, and the United States, where she spent most of her life. If you look on her arm, you can see the 3 different flags for Haiti, Japan, and the United States. The digits from each nation were fed through a digital algorithm to create this unique pattern. Miss Osaka also has a Japanese sporting equipment manufacturer, Yonex, who's been supplying her with rackets since 2008. Here's another picture of Miss Osaka right here in her sports gear. This time she has some shorts and some tights on. And again, you see her shirt that represents Haiti, Japan, and the United States. With her Yonex gear, she plays with the revolutionary Yonex X-Zone 98 racket. It's equipped with Polytour Pro 125 and Rexus 130 strings. Miss Osaka has been represented by IMG Management since 2016. Again, IMG Management is a well-known management company within the sports world, and they only take the top athletes, in particular, the top teenage athletes. Naomi Osaka is a brand ambassador for a Japanese automobile manufacturer, Nissan, and also a Japanese electrics manufacturer, Citizens Watch. She also endorses several other Japanese companies, including Japanese noodle maker, Nissan Foods, which differs than Nissan. This is Nissan. A Japanese cosmetics producer, Shiseido, as well as a broadcasting station in Japan, Wow. And last but not least, she's also sponsored by a Japanese airline, All Nippon Airways, ANA, on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. In January of 2021, Naomi Osaka was named the brand ambassador for Tag Heuer watches as well as Louis Vuitton, and she will appear in Louis Vuitton's Spring-Summer 2021 campaign. I'd like to take a quick break. Again, we're coming to you live from Vose Studios, a subsidiary of Vose Productions. I am Jamar Harp with Sports 101. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve into more of Naomi Osaka's personal life, learn about her early life, and her accomplishments on the tennis court. Again, this is Jamar Harp with Sports 101. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few moments.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
Compassion, noun. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. We're all born with it. It's in us. Don't believe me? When you hear a baby cry, something pulls at you. You want to ease that pain. You want to soothe that hurt. No one had to teach you that. It's called compassion, and it's in you. However, at some point you turned it off when it came to me.
Me. The cries of my soul have gone unheard, but today, you will hear me.
My heart has wailed a melody loud enough to shatter your ears, and you ignored me. But this week, you will hear me.
This body has beat the drums of anguish, only to be silenced. But this month, you will hear me.
This year,
this decade,
this century,
I will be heard. And
you will be the one to hear me.
And when I am finally heard,
show compassion.
Show compassion.
Show compassion.
Remember, it's in you.
Welcome back. Again, I am Jamar Harp, coming to you from Vose Studios, a subsidiary of Vose Productions. This is Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here at Sport 101, we talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective, looking under the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Again, make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other SportsZone Chicago shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. If you were with us before the break, we briefly touched on Naomi Osaka, and we're now going to get into her early life. Most people are wondering, she grew up in the United States. She has a Japanese last name. She's black. I'm confused. So let me try to explain and help this confusion. Naomi Osaka was born in Osaka City in Japan, the Osaka province of Japan, on October 16th, 1997. Her parents are Leonard Maxime Francois and Tamika Osaka. They met in Sapporo, Japan in the 1990s. Her mother is from Hokkaido, Japan, and her father is from Jacmel, Haiti. Osaka's parents met when her father was visiting Hokkaido while he was a college student in New York City. Naomi Osaka has an older sister named Mary Osaka, who was also a former professional tennis player, but whose career was derailed due to injuries. When Tamika's family, that's Naomi's mother, learned she was involved with a Haitian or African man, they deemed the relationship a disgrace. But Tamika and Francois went on and married. She forbid her family's wishes, so she got ostracized. If you know anything about history or Japan, Japan is one of the purest countries where the residents are almost exclusively 100% Japanese. That means they're not mixed with anything else. If you look back to the beginning of the show, we started off with the term Hafu. And the word Hafu is a term used to describe a mixed race individual in Japan. Now, this mixed race individual can be mixed with anything as long as one of their parents is Japanese. They also have some more derogatory terms that they use, but this is the more PC term. So since her family banned her mother from the family compound, she got no support. She was ostracized for marrying and having a child with, or children with an African man. What happened is they moved to the city of Osaka, where Naomi was born in 1997. And this is 18 months after her older sister Mary was born. Their parents decided to give the girls their mother's last name, and they tried to make a life in Japan. So what happens is her father, being a native of Haiti, wasn't quite fond of the United States and their politics, as well as their cultural politics towards individuals of African descent. So he decided to stay in Japan with their mother. But once they got ostracized by the family, they had no support. So what happened is they had to move to the United States. So her mother's family, along with Japanese culture, again, rejected the offspring of the African man and Japanese woman. So they end up moving. So what happened is at this time, you remember, she was born in the early 90s when the Williams sisters were at their zenith. So after seeing Venus and Serena Williams at the French Open in 1999 and learning how their father Richard had trained them, Francois was inspired to follow a similar path with his daughters. So again, due to being ostracized and living in poverty-like conditions, not being wanted pretty much in Japan at this time, when Naomi Osaka was 3, her family left Japan for the United States. When they got to the United States, they settled in Long Island, Nassau County in New York with her father's parents, who were directly from Haiti and then speak no English. And that's where Naomi and her sister began to play tennis in New York. They often would go to city parks, similar to the Williams sisters. There was no fancy country club. They were out there in the city park just getting it in. Osaka's father's parents, again, were directly from Haiti, could not speak English, and they only could speak Creole. So Osaka grew up in the house with 3 Haitians, well, actually 5, if you include her and her sister, and a Japanese mother speaking Creole. So she grew up learning Creole, which is a dialect used in different places, but the Haitian Creole has elements of African languages, most likely the Akan from West Africa, French, and some indigenous languages from the Caribbean region. Osaka, she can understand Japanese from living with her mother, but speaks Creole and English fluently. In 2006, the family moved to Florida as Francois felt the girls could get better training in tennis due to year-round. You know, in New York in the winter, can't really practice tennis. So they moved to Florida, and just like Richard Williams, their dad was their coach ever since they were little girls. While in New York City, they attended public school, but now they were homeschooled at night. So what happened is they would practice all day with their dad, Francois, and then they would be homeschooled at night by their mother when she got off work. Osaka and Mary became close while on the courts together, but wanting the best Mary in the match motivated Osaka for years. So Mary was actually better than Naomi, but Mary got hurt. Naomi was quoted as saying it took 12 years to beat Mary. And that's what Naomi told CNN. It was probably one of the biggest moments of her career. Naomi said that Mary beat her more than 1,000 times over her childhood. And Mary was the one that showed the early promise as a player, but again, injuries derailed her career. The Japanese side of Naomi Osaka's family was initially skeptical that pursuing tennis would pay off, but they changed their minds as she became successful and slowly ingratiated them back into the family. This is in particular her maternal grandparents. Although Naomi Osaka was raised in the United States, her parents decided that their daughters would represent Japan. One of the reasons they did this is Francois, the father, didn't really like the United States Tennis Association training module. Again, it's very similar to that of United States soccer, where it's pay to play, and most people in there, due to the amount of money their parents have in a bank account versus the amount of athletic ability they have inside their bodies. Neither parent, again, had love for America, in particular the United States Tennis Association, which again was mostly pay for play and catered to young white women. Both her parents said, we made a decision that Naomi will represent Japan at an early age. She was born in Osaka and was brought up in a household of Haitian and Japanese culture. Quite simply, Naomi and her sister Mary have always felt more Japanese than American. It was never a financially motivated decision to play for Japan, nor was it swayed by any one of the national federations, that's Japan or the United States. The main reason they did this move was motivated by a lack of interest again for the United States Tennis Association and rules of citizenship for the country of Japan. The United States Tennis Association, once they saw Naomi get better, offered her the opportunity to train, but her father declined. The one question I like to pose, if I ever got a chance to Francois, is why did he never think of taking the girls to Haiti to play tennis? They grew up in a Haitian household. They speak fluent Creole. They call themselves Haitian and Japanese or African and Japanese. One reason for this may be is because Haiti doesn't have a tennis federation. However, she could have started it very easily. Osaka, who stands at 5'11", skipped junior tournaments and started out on a pro satellite tour. This is the same path the Williams sisters take. So what happens is the junior tournaments, that's like AAA per se. We want to look at Major League Baseball. So you go from the junior tournaments to the WTA senior tour. And she just bypassed the junior tournament. Turning pro in 2013. In 2016, she was selected as newcomer of the year by the Women's Tennis Association. So with only 3 years, she was recognized as one of the best young up-and-coming tennis players in the world. Her first Women's Tennis Association win came at Indian Wells in California in March of 2018. Naomi Osaka then triumphed at the U.S. Open in September of 2018, making her the first Afro-Japanese player to win a Grand Slam title. She later came out on top at the Australian Open of January of 2019, becoming the first player since 2001 to win the following major title after her first Grand Slam win. So she followed up her first Grand Slam win with another. That's unparalleled. That victory gave Osaka the world's #1 ranking, a first for any player with Asian blood, male or female. Naomi Osaka has always played under the Japanese flag, again, due to different reasons, mainly Japanese having a tennis culture. This is also a decision that her father wanted her for. He believed the Japan Tennis Association will offer more support for his black daughters than the United States equivalent. Naomi Osaka relinquished her American citizenship in 2019 so she could represent Japan at the 2020 Games, which were going to be held in Tokyo. Giving up her American citizenship before 22 years of age serves as a double purpose because she's also fulfilling Japan's Nationality Act. Japanese Nationality Act, there's a clause in it that requires dual citizens to choose a nationality by the time they turn 18. So any Hafu in Japan, no matter what you're mixed with, Japanese and whatever, you have until 22 years of age to decide if you're going to be a Japanese citizen or not. The reason this is done is because, again, as a child, you can't make your own decisions. And by 22, you should have some years of higher education or maybe even graduated from college. So the country of Japan has set glass ceiling at 22 years of age that any Hafu need to decide whether they want to be a Japanese citizen or a citizen of their other nationality. If choosing not to be a Japanese citizen, obviously they will have to get visitor visas, etc., and have different requirements to enter as well as stay in the country of Japan. Naomi Osaka was quoted as saying, "I never know what to do when someone asks me where I'm from." That's what she tweeted back in 2017. Most times she just says Florida, because saying Japan starts an unnecessary conversation. Again, she lived the majority of her life in Florida. By the same token, she told the USA Today, "When I go to Japan, people are always confused. She has a Japanese name, Naomi Osaka, but they see a 6 foot tall black woman." After the 2019 Australian Open, Osaka split from Sasha Bajin, who helped her in coaching along with her dad, Francois. He had been with her for 2 Grand Slam titles. For much of 2019, Osaka at times was troubled by a knee injury, where she encountered difficulties on the court, not being able to control the baseline, and she lost some of her power. Wimbledon was a particular disappointment that year, and she didn't even make it past the first day of the competition. Again, she had a severe knee injury. She later shared that she was trying to enjoy the game once more, posting via Twitter on July 31st that she was relearning the fun feeling and excited about her future. At the U.S. Open in 2019, Osaka showed her sportsmanship by inviting defeated opponent and fellow African-American woman Coco Gauff to join her on a post-game interview following her 3rd round match, because she didn't want the young player to go off and cry alone. Again, the women's locker room on the WTA Tour is the most segregated out of all professional locker rooms, and oftentimes the black women are ostracized and left to themselves. So with Osaka on the court, she didn't want Coco to go in the locker room by herself. So she had her stay out on her interview. Women on the circuit criticize oftentimes the bodies of the black women, in particular Venus and Serena. If you remember when Serena wore a cat suit, she was criticized for being too muscular by the other women in the locker room. Her posterior, her curves, everything was criticized. Again, this year, Osaka didn't make it past the 4th round, and she won in Beijing later in 2019. After losing to Gauff in the 3rd round after the Australian Open in 2020, Osaka was preparing to represent Japan at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, again before the COVID pandemic took course. She said of the delay, "Of course, I'm disappointed that it won't happen this year, but we're ready to go stronger in 2021. In 2020, she won the U.S. Open, defeating Victoria Azarenka 6-1, 6-3, and 6-3. And we could show the first video, Greg, of Naomi Osaka and her defeat of Serena Williams. This is Naomi Osaka at her first big win. And again, she beat her idol, Serena Williams. So please check this video out for me.
Again, and for Osaka, 6-2. Advantage Williams. Game, second match. Osaka, 6-2, 6-4.
All right, thank you so much for showing that video, Greg. Just to unpack it, I remember we talked about the difference between the women's and men's game. So in this video, you saw both Naomi and Serena Williams on the baseline just trading power punches or just power bomb shots at each other. You also saw her grandparents in the stands. Remember, her grandparents accepted her and her sister once they saw that they were good in tennis. Now, that is questionable again because family is family and blood is blood, but at least they came back. Also, I want you to note from the video that after she lost, again, remember we talked about the women's locker room in the WTA tour is extremely segregated and racist. So if you saw Serena Williams, he went up to her, gave her a hug, talked to her, and they've done this several other times. They oftentimes support each other off the court and are competitors on. Now I would like to move into Naomi Osaka's social activism. Again, Naomi Osaka, since she gave up her citizenship, is no longer an American citizen, but does identify as an African woman. As noteworthy in 2020 for her activism away from the tennis court, as well as her success on it, Osaka was selected by the Associated Press as a Female Athlete of the Year, and results revealed Sunday by a vote of AP members, sports editors, and beat writers. It was during a tune-up tournament in New York that Osaka, whose father is Haitian and mother is Japanese, declared she would not play in the semifinal, joining fellow athletes from the NBA and elsewhere in the sports world protesting the police shooting of Blake. Naomi Osaka was quoted as saying, "There are clearly so many worthy issues. This one especially resonated with me because of my own personal upbringing. And also while the tennis tour was paused, I was able to watch and read news at length for the first time in her life." Remember, Naomi Osaka has been thoroughly immersed in tennis since she was 3 years old. Even though she grew up in Japan for a few years and lived mainly in New York and Florida with a Japanese mother, her father still taught her who she was, and she knows her African identity. This is very important because a lot of African Americans who have a black mother and father still don't claim they're African, and Naomi Osaka does, and her mother's from Japan. Let's chew on that fact for a quick second. This summer in the United States, tensions were very high, and they reached their boiling point, Osaka said. She said it was the right time for her to speak up. During the U.S. Open, Naomi Osaka brought attention to black victims of violence by arriving for matches wearing face masks bearing the names of Floyd, Taylor, Tamir Rice, Elijah McClain, Trayvon Martin, Ahmaud Arbery, and Philando Castile. If you can show these three pictures, Greg, this is what we kind of talked about. So, okay, you see one right here. This is all the names on her mask, and she's bringing up fellow Africans that died at the hands of police brutality. You go to the next one, please. All right, this is part of her clothing line. You see the continent of Africa. Again, she was born in Japan, moved to New York, and lived in Florida, where she makes clothes represent Africa. So again, she knows who she is. And the last picture, please, Greg. And this is a picture of her family. That's her mother. That is her father. And again, that's Naomi in the middle. If we can go to this quick video, we'll see Naomi Osaka giving some of her thoughts and feelings on the political climate currently in the United States.
Congratulations on reaching yet another final. How is it out there for you today with so much going on?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, of course, everything's a bit different for me, so preparing for this match today was a bit stressful, but I'm really glad I was able to close it out.
Yeah, as I mentioned, 18 break points saved. That's a tricky way to go through a match.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that high of a number, but definitely my service games I felt were tougher than normal. So yeah, I'm glad I was able to save 18 of them.
Yeah, very well done. You mentioned things are different for you now, and I'd like to talk about the past 48 hours. If we could back up to your quarterfinal match, and while you were on court, things were brewing off court with many of the other professional American teams. And when you came off the court and you heard what the NBA was doing, led by the Milwaukee Bucks, this is all in response to Jacob Blake, the 29-year-old father of three, who was shot in the back. As you said, too many hashtags and too many names following George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, so many others. What were you thinking when you left the court?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, during the entire quarantine, I was seeing a lot of things happening. And I always thought in my mind it would be nice if someone started something in tennis. And honestly, I'm more of a follower than a leader. And I like to follow things. So I was just waiting and waiting, but then I just realized that maybe I would have to be the one to take the first step. And yeah, that's kind of what happened.
So you led from the heart.
I guess so.
Were you expecting the tour, both the WTA and the ATP, as well as the tournament, to say, we'll follow you and we'll stop play?
Honestly, I didn't. I thought that, I honestly didn't even think it would be that big of a deal. I thought I would just withdraw and make a statement or whatever. But then I got a call from Steve Simon, and he said that he was fully supporting, so I'm really grateful for that. And yeah.
You said you wanted to start a conversation and bring this conversation of injustice to a predominantly white tennis world. It's only been a day and a half, but what have some of the talks been in the bubble?
Actually, for me, I haven't really talked to any of the other players that much because we're kind of in our own bubbles, but I heard that everyone was really supportive, and for me, my biggest fear was I don't want them to blame me for the one-day break just in case anyone's schedule got messed up or anything like that. So I was really scared, but everyone that I talked to was really nice and supportive.
During COVID-19, you said you worked on yourself and you wanted to improve different aspects and not just your tennis game. What else did you work on?
For me, I would say just self-confidence and being more aware of the impact that my voice can have. And I feel like this is a really big example, but and it happened really early on, but yeah.
You also wanted to learn and explore and follow your emotions. And with that, it took you to Minneapolis. Can you tell me about your trip there that you took with your boyfriend?
Yeah, so for me, being a professional tennis player, we travel a lot, and I always see the protests on news and things like that, but I can never physically be there. So the quarantine was a curse and a blessing at the same time because it gave me the opportunity to travel and process things with my own eyes.
What did you feel when you were there?
For me, I felt the energy of the city, and it was a bit surreal seeing things happen in real time and then going back to the hotel and turning on the news and knowing that you were just there at that location.
What was your parents' reaction? Your father is black, he's from Haiti, and your mother is Asian, from Japan.
Yeah, my parents are really proud of me, and I feel, for me, family is super important, so everyone in the world could be against me, but as long as my parents are with me and my sister, I feel very loved. And my dad's Haitian. We do this, so yeah, it's in my blood.
What do you mean we do this?
The history of Haiti.
Mm-hmm. You speak out, you protest. You'd be heard. What changes do you want to come from this? We've talked about tennis does a lot of the talk. Now it's time to walk. What do you want to see?
For me, I just wanted to create awareness. I felt like the NBA, it's been talked about. Everyone wore shirts. So I just wanted to create awareness in the tennis bubble, and I think I did my job, I guess.
I would say so. One final question for you. A year ago at this tournament, you were playing a match and over in your box set Colin Kaepernick alongside your boyfriend as well as Kobe Bryant. And his birthday was this week. I remember looking at that box and thinking there's a lot of energy and a lot of thought and just importance sitting there watching you. What are your thoughts on this week and as we celebrate a birthday of his?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just always wish that I would do something that he's proud of. And I felt incredibly lucky to have known Kobe and to speak to him on a personal level. So hopefully whatever I do, he won't be mad about and he'd be proud.
I think he'd be thrilled for you today.
Thank you.
Naomi Osaka, thank you so much for the past 48 hours, for being a leader and finding your voice.
Thank you.
Good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.
Again, thank you so much for showing that video, Greg. Just to unpack it, if we look at the video, we can see how Naomi Osaka responded to the reporter's questions. Number one, she came out of her shell as a 23-year-old young woman in an environment where there's, 4 or 5 black women. She got rid of all the negative connotations, what other people think, and did what was right in her heart. She stated that instead of being a follower, she wanted to be a leader this time. Another important segment I want to pull out that video is the reporter tried to back Naomi in a corner. She said, with a Japanese mother and a Haitian father, how do you feel about this? Naomi responded, I love my family, and talking with my father, this is what we do. The reporter then said, what do you mean we? She said, I'm Haitian. You know the history of Haiti. So again, this is a woman that was born in Japan, lived in New York and Florida, and is a Japanese citizen, but knows more history of Haiti, which is in the Western Hemisphere, than people in the United States. So again, kudos to her father as well as her mother for recognizing who she is and giving her true cultural identity. Again, Miss Osaka was quoted as saying the strong voices of Colin Kaepernick and LeBron James were some of the positive influences that she had to strengthen her own convictions in regards to her social activism. Turning to 2021, the 23-year-old Osaka listed these goals. She wants to work hard, do better, speak up, and be kind. Japan, where she was born, is slated to host the postponed Olympic Games next year, so she also wants to do well in that. Naomi was quoted as saying, I'm looking forward most to being with the athletes that I've waited and trained with for over 10 years for celebrating a very hard 2020. And having that happen in Japan makes it even more special, as that is the place of her birth. It's a special and beautiful country filled with culture, history, and beauty. She could not be more excited. In closing, I would like to pose a few questions. What if Osaka represented Haiti, Togo, Benin, or Ghana? The reason I listed all those countries is due to the transatlantic slave trade, all the enslaved prisoners of war that came from Africa were dropped off in many places within the Caribbean as well as North America. So not knowing what particular cultural or ethnic group they come from, we do know they did come from the West Coast region. So all those countries could be her country of lineage historically. Also would like to examine the reception she got from the Japanese only when they realized she was good. Remember, she was initially shunned by the country in the early 90s. It was kind of fairly new to have black people in Japan. So later, as society moved on, it became, I don't want to say more accepting, but tolerating of Hafu in Japan. I also would like to pose the question, isn't that similar to treatment African sports stars get in the U.S. and globally, where the United States or other institutions, if you look at France, with all their African stars on their World Cup team 4 years before, there was controversy as Nick Anelka was sent home from the World Cup. Now, all those players are loved dearly because they won a World Cup for France. I also would like to point out at such a young age, being so strong rooted in African culture, it shows the impact her father and her grandparents had on her. Growing up in a house with so many African examples, and particularly of Haitian Creole culture, she became thoroughly immersed. Hopefully, more of our athletes, male and female, can be like Naomi Osaka and develop a cultural pride and sense of self that they can display to others, as well as educating people on the social activism that needs to take place in this country. The main group that does need to be educated, however, is the people that are targeted, African Americans. If you look at other groups in this country, when they are targeted by racial oppression, they segregate themselves, circulate their money within their communities, and build themselves up. The same thing can also be said of Japan, who after World War II was completely demolished by the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, excuse me. So what did the Japanese do? They went internally, they developed a lot of technology, raised their GDP, and now they export technology throughout the world. So again, if we do that on a microscopic level in whatever country we're in of the diaspora as Africans, and we do it on a macroscopic level by sending monetary as well as cultural and educational information back to the mother continent, we all can be one. Thank you for tuning in to Sports 101. Again, this is me, Jamar Harp, coming to you live from Vose Studios, a subsidiary of Vose Productions. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Coach_Harp412. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other SportsZone Chicago shows by following us on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. Again, the SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for tuning in this week, and I will see everyone next Wednesday at our same time, same channel, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, I am Jamar Hart with Sports 101, produced by Greg Robbins. Thank you much for coming out, and we'll see everyone next week.